All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Paul Trani here, diving into, Photoshop Masterclass. Fantastic. I see you there, Prashant and Eva and Austin. Welcome, and Eric, Sue, good to see you, buddy. Appreciate you guys. Also, those on YouTube, Jesse and others. Feel free to go to behance.net/live. That's the chat I'm keeping an eye on. And we're going to dive into this Photoshop Masterclass. We're going to have some fun actually working with like metals and materials and basically changing the texture of things is the idea. So it should be pretty fun. I'm going to have a good time. Jesse, thank you. Hello, good morning. Oh, you got your coffee? It's snowing here in Colorado. I'm here in Denver. It's probably got about 3 or 4 inches out there right now, and yeah, it's a good day to be inside. Lindsay, aren't you here in Colorado? Aspen or something. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look. Just kind of roughly the outline that we'll be dealing with. You know, we'll be working with like metals and other materials, creating something I think pretty cool. Working with texts. Making things shiny with making text shiny and making it look like it's gold or any other sort of precious metal. Turning photos into like metal or gold, stuff like that. 3D metallic look using Photoshop. We'll jump into Dimension too, because I think you should be aware of all material, all apps, when you're creating and sort of bringing it all together as well. So that's kind of the idea. It's a little agenda. There's my hero, Eric. Eric knows my middle name, which is Ryan. So this is roughly what I've been working on, kind of just some inspiration, just so you kind of get an idea of what we'll be doing. I thought that something like this would be kind of fun. Okay, where you have, some metal over here using text, taking a photo, making it look metallic, maybe get into adding other elements, including, some 3D-ness, if you will, to create cool stuff. So that's our goal. Hopefully you like this stuff because that's the road we are heading down. So, good morning. Good morning. All right. Let's get this party started. I'm going to just start with maybe this file. Maybe I'll actually change the name of this as well. Again, there's one. Here's one. And we'll kind of start right here with this. And we will actually just take a name, if that's okay. Eric. We're going to use Eric's name, Eric, since you are too kind. We'll kind of work on just working and making this text metallic, okay? So that is the goal. Switching over, making sure everything is good. Yep. Fantastic. Stream is looking good. All right. Sweet. Okay, so let's kind of do this. Eric, this is your name. I'm gonna, Austin, you were following me yesterday. I see you. That's awesome. I'm gonna double click. I'm gonna use layer styles for most of this, right? And I should be able to knock this out pretty fast. First thing I want to do is add a gradient overlay, right? This gradient overlay, by the way, hopefully you're happy with all the brand new gradient overlays we have in the latest release of Photoshop. You could see them all here. And actually what I did is I just combined everything, just so you know. If I expand these out, they used to be in their separate folders, and I don't read things. I do things visually, so I just dumped everything into this long master list, right? So that's kind of where I could start. Gradient overlay. That's why you see them set up here. They're set up alongside in here. I could use one of these to begin with if I want to, but really what I want is just some soft colors. Actually, some soft, really soft yellow into something that's a little bit more intense on the ends, kind of like that, okay? And oftentimes if I need to add the same color on the other side, I can click right here and I can bring it over there. But I'll show you even one better. I'm actually going to remove this, have this one gradient, because I used to do this all the time. I'm like, okay, I want it to be strong in the middle, and then I would duplicate it and bring it over here. But there's actually a feature that will do that for me if I click OK. Right in here, linear, we can change it to reflected. So this means it's going to have it darker on the top and the bottom. So just change that to reflected. And now you can see, hopefully you can see that. But now that color that was on the end is actually in the middle. So that's what I'm doing for this letter. You can see it right over here. And we're good to go. Abdenor, you do not need the latest Photoshop for this, actually. Most of the stuff I'm showing can be done in even CS6, so you should be all right. Okay. A couple other things I can do. I'll add just a nice inner glow right here. And this time I'll use a little bit stronger color, right? So we're going to go with like this nice sort of orange color. And I'm going to change this to multiply. Right, let's actually bring up this opacity as well, and we need to really bring up this looks good, softer, yes, yes. Let's bring up the size, definitely. So there we see it right off to the side right here, right? We're just giving it a nice glow on the outside, right? Just enough. Let's go with that. We can see it kind of working. I haven't even gotten to the exciting part, by the way. This is what I want to get into, which is this bevel and emboss right up here at the top, right? I added the colors. Now let's get into bevel and emboss. We want it to be an inner bevel. We want to chisel it hard, right? It's going to be that hard chisel, and then we're going to crank up the size of it as well. You can see I'm cranking up the size of it a lot. I could even go a lot larger than that. I might have to work on this a little bit. So let's change this. Cranking up the depth, cranking up the size, cranking it up. And this is where kind of you start to see some magic right here, right? We get some of that depth that we're looking for, and we see it off to the side as well. So I actually change the size so it's large enough to where there's no flat part, that it comes to a razor sharp point, right? So that looks good. And right down here, this is probably what you're going to see the most. And again, I can kind of change the lighting of the angle there. But right in here, it's the gloss contour is what you want to play with. You want to anti-alias it. And you want to go in here and you want to pick some nice mountains. Typically, this ring double is a good one, right? We want peaks and valleys. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. I don't know why my sound went out. That was really odd. Good? We good? All right. I am back. That was very weird how the sound just cut out. I apologize for that. But I'm back now. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's really weird. How did it just like drop the audio all of a sudden? So I'll turn the mic down a little bit. It's a little hot, but you should be able to hear me. And the cool thing about this, by the way, since I've added this, I have the bevel and emboss, and we can start to turn on and off these just so you can see everything that has happened. I'm not sure when it cut out, but all I was doing in that last segment is playing with the highlights and the shadows, right? So I can turn that off and you can see where everything comes from. This is a lot of that magic, is that bevel and emboss. We have the inner glow that gives it a nice color, more importantly, a variation in color. And then we also have the gradient overlay, which is the main color. So these two, the inner glow and the gradient overlay, add the variation in color, and then the bevel and emboss really makes it look metallic, and then we're done, just like that. So there you go, Eric. All right. Oh no, Susan, you can't hear me? I don't know what to say. But here you have Eric. Nice gold text. And once you have that set up, you can just add that as gold in your styles panel right here. So that's what you want to do. I have some other ones in here too that I can kind of click. We'll do Eric. Susan, I feel so bad for you. Yeah, refresh our browser, I guess. But we could do a couple. Let's do Eric the Great. Right? There we have it. Taking this down a little bit. Maybe I'll actually play with the properties panel and just take in the spacing like that. Okay. For the second one, by the way, I actually have another text effect that you can see right here. This one is more like a gold foil. Okay. This is a gold foil, but we have two different looks. Now let me just show you that really fast. If I just click inside here, it's done. If we take a look right in here with the texture, what I did, in fact, if I turn this off, you can kind of see where that texture comes from. Okay, so right in here, that's where I picked a pattern of just some grain. Okay, so adding that grain for the texture in bevel and emboss. Right, we can see just this inner glow. We can see the satin, of course, as adding those highlights, and then we have some gradient overlays, and then this pattern overlay as well. So turning that off as well, turning this off, you can see it starts to look like the original text. Okay, but I'll turn those back on. It's adding these texture overlays to that, and not only that, I can actually make this chisel hard if I want to, and then give it a little bit more depth if I want to kind of make it match the other one. But there's two different styles now going on with this for this text. And now we have, again, just two different looks for creating metal. This is more like, yeah, this is like a gold foil, basically. Eric the Great. All right, Eric. Let's move on because I want to dive into playing with photos. Okay. I might change the name, Eric, because I think this skull is a little intense. But we have this text. Let's actually move this down. Let's move this up. This makes it look like you're dead. You're not this skull, and I think that's the scary part of it all. So I might change the name. I haven't decided. All right, so jump in here. I'm going to change that down here. The type is now the same. We're going to do something similar, but we're going to make this photo look like it's metallic. So that is our next goal. Hopefully that works for you, right? All right, stream is looking good. Fantastic. I still have the readout. You're not dead, Eric. Exactly. Okay, so let's kind of dive into this. I'm going to do a lot of this. In fact, I'm going to just pull my properties panel over here because I'm going to be working a lot with the properties panel, and I need to see all these various layers. Okay, you have your nice view right in here. what we're going to be doing is adding a bunch of adjustment layers. So right down here, I'm going to be adding lots of these. I'm going to add some brightness and contrast. Working with that, I'm going to crank this up, crank up the contrast, right, to about 58, 59, right? I'm going to add a little bit more in here. Maybe taking out any color by adding hue and saturation and taking the saturation all the way down. Okay, so that's my next step. Right, I'm just kind of going through this. I think this is where a lot of the magic starts to happen as well, is right in here with the curves, right? So curves, this is where all the magic happens, is with curves, and you're basically adjusting the brightness along this curve from dark to light. You could do this a number of ways. In fact, you can actually grab the pencil, by the way, and you could just draw, you'll go up and down, and we just make these ridges, right? Kind of like that. There we go. So I've just drawn with the pencil there, and you can see it starts to make it look like metal, okay? So the more drastic I draw, let's make these very steep, you could start to see it starts to look maybe a little bit more like metal. You know, maybe. All right, let's change this back. Let's actually draw this in. Let's draw this in really fast. Some curves. Second tool I'm going to select is this one right here. The one above it, the Bezier tool, or at least allowing you to manipulate those Bezier points. So I can take this, I can bring this down, and this is where we're looking at the image, and then we're determining whether this should be higher or lower. Let's bring this one up higher. See how it adds more shine in those midtones? And then we can make this part a little bit darker, kind of like right over here, making it look a little bit more like metal, right? But we have somewhat of an issue with this, if you ask me, right? Because I actually have a lot of this grain right in here that I'm not a fan of, all right? So what I can do is I can go into Filter, Blur, and give it a nice Gaussian blur, okay? For this Gaussian blur, you can see it starts to smooth out a lot of those sort of rough edges, right? So I can crank that up. I can make it higher or scale down the radius a little bit. I want it about 8.99. That looks pretty good, 9.1. And I want it to blur out most things, but I don't want it to blur out the edges. So I'll go in here and I'll just select a simple brush, right? And we'll just remove kind of from the edges right here, because I want some of that detail in some places, but not in others. So I usually kind of will make the sides nice and sharp, because we want that crisp edge. Take this flow down a little bit so it blends in a little bit more. And right in here for the eyes, sharpening. It's kind of like I'm sharpening it, but I'm actually just taking away the blur is all I'm doing, right? Kind of like that. That looks a lot better. Cool. Would you use curves if you want to make a person pop out on the web? Yeah, like use curves. If you use curves a lot like this, you're going to end up with like an HDR, high dynamic range look with images. So it can pop out, but it can seem like it'll make it start to look kind of fake if you mess with it too much. That's all. All right. Let's move on. Let's add some more fun things to this. In fact, let's go in here. Let's play with the color a little bit. For color, I'm actually going to use a color lookup, a lookup table. Color lookup, because I know in color lookup there happens to be, right over here, a crisp warm look, okay, because I want it to look like gold. Adding that crisp warm, yeah, it does make it look more gold, as we can see right here. From there, it's the fun thing about color lookup tables is that it applies cool lookups, but you don't have control over the color. So it means that you're going to probably have to add some more hue and saturation. I might have to beef up the saturation a little bit for this to get it a little bit brighter, okay? And then I can add some more brightness and contrast. Oops, not levels. Trash that. Add some more brightness and contrast as well to it. There we go. Maybe more, maybe less. Oh yeah, maybe less bright. Actually, that's not bad. Cool. That works for me. Fantastic. Let's move on, right? So I've added all these various adjustment layers. The most important one is probably this curves. If I turn that on and off, you can see the difference it makes, right? The rest are just really for fun at the end of the day, right? Another thing I can do as well is add a new layer, sample this color, and for this color right here, I want to shift it. I want to shift it more into the gold, right? Kind of like that. So I can add some different variations in color by painting on top of this image, right? So I'm painting right here. You can see it's obviously working, but really what I want to do, so I want to clip all of these. Oh, I'll do you one better. All of these should be clipped. Boom, boom, boom. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. There we go. Clipping accordingly. All right. Now come in here and start to play with these various blend modes. So we have color burn, right? We have multiply. So some of these might work for just adding a splash of color. I usually go into overlay, soft light are also good. But usually I'll kind of pick one of these to just change the variation in color. I think multiply is pretty good because it's not too intense. And I can start to paint and just add sort of like different colors in there if I feel like it needs it, okay? Just some slight variation. All right, there you are. Not bad. Here's my final, by the way. I'll actually take all these, group them together, and let's turn on this one. This is another version I actually made kind of before I started live streaming. Is this one. This one's not bad. Actually, the only difference here, I don't know if there's much difference. Maybe the settings might be a little bit different. So I don't know which one you like. Would love to hear, Ryan Chase. We have two different versions. I think, honestly, that this blur is a little intense for this other one. It's a little intense. So just turn that one off. We'll go with this one and we can kind of move on, okay? We have Eric the Great. Sweet. We could have some fun with this as well, okay? So we're going to get into some design things that I think would just be cool to add. So let me just open up Libraries panel. Try to do this as fast as possible. Some flowers and branches, dropping some in, right? Yeah, let's do this really fast, right? Have some leaves kind of coming out. Using puppet warp. Bending this content. Kind of have it bending up and out of the eye or something like that, right? Adding a layer mask. You see what I'm doing. Something kind of like that. All right. Here I'm going to add a black and white filter on top of that green right there. There we go. We're going to make everything kind of give it a nice look. Let's drag this over here so we can see it a little better. There we go. And take this green down. Okay, so just kind of a cool idea that I thought would be neat to work on is taking flowers and different elements, right, that we see in here, taking this one right here, see those, all those colors, and combining it with this gold. Let's flip it. Flip horizontal. There we go. Move it over. Trying to go as fast as I can. Duplicating this black and white layer. Clipping it to that one. Like so. Boop. There we go. And then we can move those to maybe behind the skull. Like that. Okay. Just having some fun here. I don't know what you think. Yeah. Always working with this black and white adjustment layer. Because this black and white adjustment layer, let's open up properties. It's going to work differently. I'm controlling the greens. Typically use that so I can control these colors individually because I want these branches to be really dark. That is the idea. Let's grab some flowers. I don't know. What else do you want to see? Let's grab a couple more of these. I'm making this really fast. Let me know if you have questions. That's the idea. I'm going to kind of move on from this in a second, not to worry. I'm just trying to get something kind of cool that will hopefully impress you. I'm just trying to impress you. Right in here, have something coming out of the eyes too. Maybe this branch here. Black and white. Like so. Rotate. Something like that, okay? So again, just a different, just a fun take, something that works well with this gold, right? Because gold is such a strong element. It becomes even, I feel like it becomes stronger and more dynamic when you add like just black and white to it. Lynn, where did I get my leaves in the library? Well, actually I got those from Adobe Stock. So Adobe Stock actually has a lot of stuff. You can, especially for trees and leaves, you can find one Adobe Stock image and that has multiple things that you need, and then just start cutting them out, and then you just save them to your library. I did all this work a long time ago, but you can see that this really helps me when creating designs because I have all that stuff ready to go. Right? Once I have that ready to go, I need to go down here to just above the skull layer with a brush. And I would probably start painting in some shadows. Or, yeah, oops, flipping that. Painting in just some shadows so it looks like it's in front of this skull like that. Right, just doing something kind of like that. Painting that over, painting it over here. Just doing this real quick and dirty, as you can see. Cool? Eric the Great, last thing I'll do is add a gradient layer. That's what I'll do. And not that one, but just add a nice gradient. Wait for it. Black to a medium gray like that. Clicking OK, making this a radial gradient like that. And yeah, maybe changing the scale or something. There we go. Let's just go with something like that. Boom, done. Eric the Great, finished. Cool. Yeah, you're right. Leaves came from Adobe Stock. So this is what I have. You could see what I did earlier. This is one. Ooh, this one reminds me. I have a couple more things going on here that I want to quickly add to Eric the Great. So we have that text, which is pretty cool right here. Sometimes what I'll do is I can act like there's a light source coming from the top or bottom of this text, right? So I need to kind of figure out where my light source is. From there, I can go ahead and add a gradient overlay. That goes from white to transparent, like that, making sure this is white. There we go. Clicking OK, and then changing this to overlay, right? So that adds a little bit of light kind of coming from the bottom is what I'm going for. In fact, you know what? I think this needs to be this color right here. Kind of needs to be that sort of yellow color, right? So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to add a splash of color, as you can see, to the bottom. you probably hardly even notice it. Let me do something else that's going to, hopefully you know about, but if you don't, this is super cool. I have brushes, by the way. Afroja, good to see you. Paloma, how are you? How's everybody doing? Roman, hopefully everybody's having a good time. I have a bunch of brushes and things. Let me actually go in here, select my brushes. I have all these fun brushes, and I even have some lens flare brushes. So you can actually find a lot of these out there for free. You know, to be honest with you, I can select one of these and use them. Lens flare brush, selecting that, taking it down in size. Smaller, smaller, smaller. Making sure that it is, you know, this color. Smaller, 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 smaller. And then I can add that. You can barely see it right there. I need to check the brightness. Oh, the flow. The flow is down. Oh, crank up that flow. So basically everything's set to the defaults. I can click right here and I can add that sort of lens flare right there. Obviously, I think I need to change the color, make it much smaller, and I can start to add little highlights in here. And I can do that using these different lens flares that I have. Here's an even more unique one. Wow, why is it so large? It's massive. Taking that down to be something really small. I'm going to add a little lens flare right there. This works pretty well. My only problem with this, I gotta play with the color, because typically with those lens flares, they're not always white or even a yellow. I'll typically either use a brush, or I will actually have a blank layer. It's all black, and then go to filter, render, go down to lens flare. So add your own lens flares. It's already baked into Photoshop, and I'll show you why this is better. If I go into lens flare right in here, you could already tell all these colors. Lens flares are never all pure white. That's why I have a problem with the brushes. I want all these different colors to be used, right? So I'll just do something kind of like that, and I can take down the size if I want to, right? Do something like that. Looks pretty good. Click OK. And just like that, there's my lens flare, right? From there, I'll convert it to a smart object because I'm going to be resizing it a lot. And then I will just start duplicating it and all that fun stuff. Awesome. There it is. Shrink it down. In fact, what do we want to do? We want to change this blend mode screen. It's either going to be lighten or screen. Screen looks a little bit more intense. Love it. Now we have some cool lens flares that we can work with. Okay. I can also shift this color, and that's what I'm going to do next. Hue. Shift it. Like so. Click OK. Save. Close. Done. Let's move on, right? Boom. That's a lens flare, right? Making this really small and adding this different places. See? Notice the difference between these two? Did you see that, Steve? Look at this. Look at the difference. This is the brush, and then you have the one that's baked into Photoshop. I like this one like so much better, right? That adds that zing that I'd like for this project, right? Adding that highlight, Command J, Control J if you're on a PC to jump the layer, basically duplicating that layer, putting that like a couple other places, and sizing it down, rotating it, all that fun stuff. Cool? Does Eric approve? Afroja, you like it? Cool. So we could add this anywhere we want. Command J, bring it down here, scale it up for the skull, right? Adding that little highlight right there. Boom. Right? There you go, Eric the Great. Eric is pretty great, isn't he? All right, fantastic. So that's done. We can see the final one here. Right? I need to kind of work on the shadows a little bit, but you get the idea. I played with that text a lot, but this is all done based on what you've learned today, which is pretty exciting, right? Jesse can hear a zing. It's bright and sparkly. Good to have you here, Roman, as well. We're also on behance.net/live. But yeah, it's a little macabre. I think it's kind of cool. I did move the shadows around a little bit. I could actually open up the final one, by the way. But I want to move on to something else as well. So there's lots to do, right? Let's kind of move on from this. Let's see. 'Cause There we go. I'll just open up this final one. But I want to move on from this because basically what I'm doing is I took a photo and I made it look like it was metal when there's actually other ways of doing that. Okay, so here's the final. You can see how everything's done. Everything you've learned off to the side, black and white. Lots of black and white layers, just turning those branches and leaves and things into just black and white elements. And then we can see all these different parts. This is the layer that has an issue, right? Because I moved the text so that the shadows don't quite line up. So forgive me for that. That's the only change I would make to this. But again, this is just our fun example. Maybe I'll just take that down a lot. Let's move on. Because what I'm doing is I'm taking a photo and I made it look, I made it shiny, basically. When I could probably use something like Dimension. So I could show you Dimension, and I can show you a couple other things. Man, so much to show you. Oh, I'm getting excited, and I don't know where to begin. Okay, but let's go to this one, for instance, right? I can go and I can try to find a skeleton, right, and make it look metallic based on what you learned today. Or I can actually go find a 3D object and apply a metal material to it. So that's what I want to do actually in this case. So that's why I would just want to, I know this is a Photoshop masterclass, but you know what? You can't, I want to make you a design master, not just a Photoshop master. And that means you're going to have to use potentially other, let's get rid of that, go away, other tools like Dimension. So Dimension, rather than finding a photo from Adobe stock, you can find 3D assets, right? So you can see this skull right here as I bring it in. I got this off of Adobe stock. Stock.adobe.com. I've searched for, rather than photos, I've searched for 3D elements and downloaded them. Another place you can look is Turbo Squid. I like Turbo Squid a lot. You could actually search on skull. Let's do skull. And right over here, price, you just change it to free. So you can find free elements out there, just so you know. So you can see a lot of them right in here, right? So that's perfect. I can grab one of those. As long as it's an OBJ, I can bring it into Dimension. Just go to import, right? Since I used Adobe stock, it automatically appears right here. We see it there. We can grab this. Oops. Don't rotate it. Scale it up, right? Looks pretty cool. Here's our cool skull. And guess what? We can start to use materials in here. So under starter assets, I can go to this second tab, standard materials. I could see right in here, and I can grab a brass and drop it right on there. Nuno, what's up? Good to see ya. So there you have it. You have the 3D, of course. This is Adobe Dimension. I'm actually moving around the object. I'm moving the camera, right? If I select the object itself and I start to move it, you can see the reflections start to change, right? You get the idea. You can actually download materials. So I actually downloaded some materials from Adobe stock as well. So here I actually have a natural, like, brushed gold right there, right? You can see, there it is. And I can play with this some more. So since this is reflecting the lighting of the environment, well, I can change the lighting, right? I can drop in potentially a different background, all sorts of things. Let's get moving. You know, if I add different lights to it, right? Here's the studio low key. Here's the warm key. You can start to see how it changes this, and you can have a lot of fun in here if you ask me, right? This actually already looks pretty cool. I've changed the light, but I can actually manipulate the light a little bit more in my properties panel. So right over here, I can change the rotation, right? To get that the way I want, right? And then I can render out that PSD. Super simple. Can you cut objects in Dimension? Shahid, no, you cannot. There's no messing with any of the, yeah, you can't, you can change the size and other things, but you can't. Oh, cool. Awesome. Gina agrees. She used Dimension and Turbo Squid as well. Fantastic. So that's the goal. Find what you want. Load it up. Drop it in. Did I delete my light accidentally? Abdinur, what does it take to become a master of things? A lot of work at the end of the day. Right up here, I'm going to click to zoom in this skeleton to the current view. So I can drop on, by the way, check this out. For the skeleton, I can drop on the 1 key will rotate, 2 key will pan, 3 key zooms in and out. So you start to get used to these shortcuts. So here's my cool skeleton. I can drop this on. I could drop it on the sternum right here. Okay, it's going to apply it accordingly. And you can see it really off to the side. There it is, the sternum being applied appropriately. And I can apply it to all these individual elements. But I can also drop this material on here on the jaw, for instance, just by dropping it on that layer. Okay, so if I wanted to apply this to the whole skeleton, I can just grab that gold, drop it on that layer that says human skeleton, and it will be applied to all of it, right? Easy enough. Let's kind of move on because, again, I know this is a Photoshop masterclass. I'm going to try to get some fun colors. Perfect, just like that. That looks awesome, right? Rotating this into place right there, and then I can render it out. Render done, right? We've rendered it, and you can see it right here. Let's open this up, take a drink of my coffee. Yes, Koki, my name is Paul Trani, but you can call me dude if you want to. So check this out. Once you render it out, here's just the background color, no big deal. I can change that. Cool, easy enough. But you also get these additional layers. I turn this on. I get this for all of the material selection masks, object selection masks. So now I can come in here and start to select these individual objects. Clicking here, let's go ahead and select that. Boom, boom. I can select by color. That's okay. There we go. Selecting all these, right? That gives me that selection, and then I can apply it to the... Wait for it. Wait for it. There we go. Allows me to isolate. So you get those, you get these different selection layers. You even get a depth information layer, which is cool. Okay. But through there, I can select that. I can have this rendered image. I can add brightness and contrast. I can push that to the back, maybe take it down like so, right? And not only that, we can take some elements that we have already played with earlier. Let's close this one. Let's go in here. Let's grab a bunch of content. Let's grab all of this. Bring it over. Wait for it. Wait for it. I'm just trying to speed up the process by dropping in layers. All right, there we go. Just put some things inside. That was my whole goal, just to drop some things inside. So now it's like we have them inside of this cage. In fact, since this is a cage, let's jump out to Libraries panel. Again, using Adobe Stock. I have so many animals, it's crazy. But it's so nice because you gradually build your library over time. Where's my bird? Let's do a search. There we go. That's a watercolor bird that I made. That's okay. Perfect. Dropping that in. And now I'm just making a bird cage. You get the idea. And yes, I have about, 10 more minutes. This is great for me, right? There's our fun bird kind of maybe busting out of there. You get the idea. Cool. Awesome. Yes, there's so many tips and tricks in here that you can do, right? So again, this is our design number 2, which actually is turning out pretty cool, right? Shrinking that up, showing you dimension, how you can render out. And in fact, this is what I've also done, right? Let's take a look. Gold skull. Let's open up this one. Again, a series of elements. Really just purchasing one asset off of Adobe stock, and now I have all these different objects to use in my design, right? You get the idea. Okay, cool. This one actually looks pretty good. Going back to our skeleton that we were working on, here it is. It's a little yellow. I can play with the color all I want now that I'm in Photoshop. It's pretty easy. You can see this final version. In fact, let me open this up since I do have 10 minutes, but I at least want to, I think it's really helpful to just kind of peek under the hood at someone's file. So that's what I'm opening up now. This is just a flat JPEG. It's the same process. I will say one thing that's missing here, Susanna. Yeah, Susanna asked me questions, by the way. This is super easy. Just to really recap while this is opening, I just rendered out this graphic. In fact, let's apply a different metal to it because this might be the one I used. There's a different metal, right? It's more of a gold. Rendered that out. It gave me that, including all the selectable layers, and then I just started dropping in flowers. How these were dropped in is just, I would cut out a bird. Here's the bird right here. Cutting it out and placing it in place, right? It's all pretty straightforward from there, okay? For each one of these, they have a black and white layer as well. So this butterfly down here, it's black and white, but I'd use the black and white adjustment layer because I wanted to be able to let's just pull this. Let's get rid of some of this. So many panels open. Properties. I wanted to control the brightness of different parts of this particular element, this butterfly, right? I think the darker the better for most of these. Cool. All right, so let's move on. I wanted to show you something else really fast. You ready for this? The last and final way to take something and make it look crazy. Let's take this object right here, okay? This particular, here we go. I'm going to try this. This is going to be really interesting. Let's take this. I will blur it slightly, okay? So I'm getting rid of a lot of those bumps, okay? So kind of like what I did over here for this one. I smoothed it out a little bit by applying a blur to it. So for this one, I blurred this out a little bit. Let's actually merge these two layers. Now check this out. I'm going to do a little bit of 3D in Photoshop as well, because Photoshop does have 3D as well. 3D, new mesh from layer, and I can create a depth map, okay? So you can actually take a flat image and turn it into something 3D. And the depth map is going to have peaks and valleys based on the lights and darks. So the brighter, the more close it will be. The valleys, of course, going to be the dark areas. But that's what the depth map is. New mesh from layer, depth map to plane. Let's just do a plane, right? No. It's asking if I want to see the 3D layer, but there it is. Here, it actually turns it into, in fact, let's change the background so we can see this a little better. Makes it 3D. So let's open up the 3D panel right here. Here's my scene, and I can rotate it, and you can see all these peaks and valleys that were made. So for this depth map that was made, I want to scale it down. $10? No? Oh, hold on. Wait for it. Let's undo that. Let's select it. This will be easier if I just select it right here. Depth map, select. There we go. There it is. Right in here, just like Dimension, by the way, I have these controls because I just want to scale it down the front. And now you can see those peaks and valleys right there, okay? So there it is, rotating it around, and we can start to control the light as well. So here's the light. Bring that around to the front. I don't know why I put it on the backside, but now I've actually taken a photo and made it look 3D. There it is. And by the way, we can start to play with all those materials in here as well. Look, check this out. We have metallic in here. That's what I was doing. I could crank up that metallicness. I can remove that texture. There we go. This is even better. Yeah. Photoshop can do a lot. But now look at this light. You can actually get a better sense for this. Casting those shadows appropriately actually made a photo 3D. From there, I'd have to do some more work just to play with this material, like refraction, yeah. Crank up the metallicness, all that fun stuff. In fact, let's click in here. Let's see if there's any. Nope. I was hoping there was like a metal in here, but let's just go ahead and try one of these. Let's try this one. That bronze. There you go. All these, you could see all these scribbliness. That's all that reflection that's taken place. Kind of like what curves did earlier. Okay, so there you go. There you have it. I did it. We're done. It's a little freaky. I don't know how useful it is, to be honest with you. I was like, I had really high hopes for this, but it could be a little tricky to work with, in all honesty, right? But again, that's what we've done. Created those peaks and valleys from a photo. Typically, in this case, what I'd actually want to do is I'd actually want to do that with text. So I'm going to take somebody else's name now. Oh, geez. We only have 3 minutes. Come in here. Gina, she's the last. This is why I like it when people comment. Because if you're commenting, you end up using your name. So if you don't want your name used, don't comment. But it's Gina this time. We're going to make Gina's name gold right there. We got it right here. Selecting that. Making a 3D extrusion. Boom. Boop. 3D extrusion. Create. Wait for it. And we're extruding her name right there. And just take this. What is up with the... I don't know why it always puts the... There's Gina's name, right? There we have it. Selecting it. Going into the properties. Changing the bevel, cranking it up. Yeah, that should have done it. Wait for it, rotating this around. We could see that text. Zooming in, selecting that text again. Extrusion depth, we can control that as we'd expect. And then I'm trying to change the bevel. Bevel's looking still a little shallow. All right, the cool thing about this, by the way, I would want to take this, and the cool thing is I can go to 3D, and I can export this 3D layer. So from there, exporting this as a OBJ file, clicking OK. On my desktop, Gina. We now made a 3D object using Photoshop that we could then turn around and use in Dimension, because Dimension gives me so much more control. We can see File, Import, 3D Model, down to the last minute, hustling through. There she is, Gina. Boom. Bringing it in, getting rid of this skeleton. There she is. Gina, let's make it gold. Boom. Wait for it. Done. 3D text. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. That is it for me. Thank you so much. There's so much more we can do. I'll start posting some of these to Instagram, so just follow me on Instagram. And yeah, have fun working with materials and metals basically in Photoshop. So thanks so much for joining me. Have a beautiful weekend. I really like this one too. I'll be posting this one shortly as well. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see ya. Bye.